5781 on this Rosh Hashanah. I read recently in a post on Facebook something that a friend wrote who I think spoke for many of us in saying that 5781, the new year, cannot get here fast enough. Demarcations of time, of course, do not alter the course of history, but we can be forgiven for holding on to the hope that somehow today ushers in a new year of blessing, of goodness, and the old year will fade quickly into the past. Each of us had our struggles this past year. My dear Abba, Rabbi Emmanuel Rose, died in February. Hannah's father, William King, died this summer. And each of you have had your own struggles and losses, but collectively the experience has beggared belief. The walls seem to have fallen in. This Tisha B'Av, the words of the prophet Jeremiah in Eicha had a power that I don't think they've had in the recent past for us. It says, "The crown has fallen from our head. Because of this, our hearts are sick. Because of these, our eyes are dimmed. Because of Mount Zion, which lies desolate, foxes prowl over it. Why have you forgotten us utterly, forsaken us for all time?" Certainly we are far from the destroyed temple in Jerusalem, in time, in distance, and in meaning, but we share a sense with our forebears of a world coming apart. We live at a time in which chaos and disorder seem to rule the day. Violence in our streets, the assault on constitutional protections and political norms, a global pandemic that has taken 200,000 almost American lives, the implosion of our economy, the evaporation of financial hopes of millions, unprecedented acrimony in political life, with right and left seemingly speaking entirely different languages, but consistently a language of acrimony and hate, the paranoid suspicion of every core institution of our political lives, which has come under fire, from elected officials to the courts, the military, the media, and also the still bubbling up racial hatred that comes to the surface because of our nation's untreated wounds. As what once took for granted vaporizes before us, we have the unsettling feeling that we have no control over our lives. A strong sense of doom accompanies our reading the news or even pouring through the synagogue email when we learn that we can't gather together for the cherished comfort of communal prayer, as on Shabbat and as on these high holidays where it stings even a little more. The fabric of our collective lives is badly torn, and we could be forgiven for wondering whether it is torn beyond repair. Will life ever be the same? What makes it more challenging is that the collapse of so much of public life is the shifting background to the ordinary difficulties with which we still have to contend. For some of us, this past year was one of real pain and suffering, perhaps because of the pandemic or the loss of income associated with the economic challenges that we're facing, or perhaps simply because life can always be so profoundly difficult. We feel often these days without hope. As a parent, my hope crystallizes in my thoughts about the future of Hannah's and my boys. The other night, as a smoke-filled windstorm sent garbage sailing through our neighborhood and one of my children sobbed in anticipation of yet another isolating Zoom school day on his computer, I read on a science website article in which a UCLA scientist suggested that the out-of-control fires consuming California's and Oregon's forests are only a hint of what's to come as climate temperatures increase. What kind of world have Hannah and I brought these boys into? I've had that thought on more than one occasion, and I know I'm not alone. The question, what kind of world is this? This is the profound question that all of us must answer on Rosh Hashanah. It is not a question to be avoided or looked away from. I strolled through my neighborhood last week, and that image from Lamentations of a fox among the ruins was very much in my mind, that image that I shared at the opening. Acrid smoke containing the ashes of ancient trees and who knows what beautiful creatures obscured my view and stung my eyes. Nearly all of the businesses on 23rd Avenue had closed out of fear for the health of employees and clients, customers, doors closed, windows boarded against the smoke and the fear of looters, and wandering among the immaculately frightful streets, I saw a stray dog. What kind of world is this? A story. Rabban Gamaliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Joshua, and Rabbi Akiva went to Jerusalem. And when they reached the Temple Mount, they saw a fox emerging from the place where the Holy of Holies had once been. The others started weeping at this reminder of the Jewish people's fall. Rabbi Akiva laughed, and they said to him, "Why are you laughing?" He said to them, "Why are you weeping?" And they said to him, "A place so holy that it is said of it that any stranger that approaches it shall die, and now foxes climb over it. Shouldn't we weep?" And he said to them, "That is precisely why I laugh." Akiva goes on to explain that the utter destruction to him signaled that finally the words of the prophets could be seen to be coming true, the prophets that promised a restoration of hope and a reconstruction of the temple and a restoration of the Jewish people to their homeland with their God. Rabbi Akiva, in that moment of suffering, was reminded of the words of the prophets who assured us that this moment of destruction was a forerunner of a time of hope. So let us consider that fox. The rabbis see the little scavenging creature among the ruins of the once great home of the Creator, and gazing upon this vivid image of a dream destroyed, they cry, and they recall the magnificent past of this holy place, once home to prophet, priest, and pilgrim. We too behold a world brought to ruin, plague, hatred, flame, an array of fleeing animals literally approaching our cities and searching aimlessly among us for food or shelter, people fleeing destroyed homes and seeking help. Hopeless, we cry like Akiva's colleagues. But what does Rabbi Akiva see that allows him to laugh? He sees that the present is not merely the endpoint of the past. Akiva understands that the present contains the future. The fox is not just the result of the sins of his forebears in the telling of the rabbis that brought the temple to the ruins. It foretells of the prophecies of hope, of a Jerusalem rebuilt. Rabbi Akiva understands that while the present may seem barren, with time it will prove to nurture the seed of a blossom that will one day come to be. In the middle of this past month of Elul, on September 5th, a chord was played on an organ in a German church. This was remarkable because the previous chord change in the song was 7 years ago. How could this be? Well, the John Cage composition, called As Slow as Possible, is played over years and decades, and that's what was being played on that organ in that German church. The next chord change will be in February of 2022, pretty quick by comparison. And the song will be completed in the year 2640. What happens when we see ourselves as musicians playing the song of the universe, a song that may be 639 years long, as this one is, or 2,000 or 3,000. Rabbi Akiva laughs because he sees the temple ruins as just one note, one painful note, in a beautiful, joyful song whose phrases float over millennia. But might it be, if we view the world on such a timeline, that we inhabit a kind of calm in the face of great danger that might actually prevent us from confronting the present? Isn't that a kind of escape if we view our lives against such a broad timeline? If every note is heard only as part of a great, pure, and easy harmony, then the beautiful notes of a rising sun will sound the same to us as a political crisis or great pain. Might it not make us too patient as the song unfolds? Or, to return to the story, isn't there a self-satisfied danger and passivity into Akiva's laughter. Religion is a narcotic when it aims at satisfaction. When it is used just for laughter or just to enjoy a beautiful song, religion can be dangerous. In the Haftarah, Isaiah warns us, as I mentioned previously in my other sermon, against religious complacency. And as those who are rooted in our past, Jews face twin dangers. On the one side, that we break free from our past and in doing so lose its ethical and spiritual wisdom. And as a Jew and a rabbi, I have spent the last 25 years fighting to make sure that the Jewish communities of which I have been part do not succumb to this loss. However, I've come to believe that the greater danger may be on the other side, that we become imprisoned by the gilded cage of the satisfactions and comforts of the life of Torah and mitzvah, poring over its pages of wisdom, tranquilized by its teachings. This kind of Judaism, so prevalent today, in which we are anesthetized into a kind of smiling optimism, I think is really just another kind of despair. So what are we to make of Akiva's laughter as he sees that fox? At the end of Yom Kippur morning service, we read in Ele Eskara of Akiva's martyrdom. Akiva was captured by the Romans and put to a horrifying death. And during that, he famously recites the Shema to the astonishment of his students, affirming that even at this moment, he sees beauty and hope and possibility in the world. A giant who once laughed at the promise of a temple in ruin is brought to death by those who ruined it. What led Akiva to this place in our Machzor? The answer to that is an important part of our understanding the meaning of Akiva's laughter. In 132 of the Common Era, a Jew named Shimon Bar Koseva began a revolt against the Romans. Shocking and in its scope and its initial success, the revolt saw Bar Koseva emerge as a charismatic and effective recruiter and leader of Jews. Though Rome drew on troop reinforcements from throughout the region, Bar Koseva established control over Judea for 2 years and even minted money for use in the Jewish sovereign nation. Within 4 years, though, the rebellion was indeed crushed by the Romans, who killed its leaders and its supporters, including Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva had thrown his weight behind this leader, Bar Koseva, pointing to the Torah verse prophesying that a star will arise among Jacob. Akiva dubbed him Bar Kochba, son of the star, indicating that this leader, this military, charismatic leader and political leader, was in fact Mashiach, the Messiah. Some have even suggested that Rabbi Akiva's tens of thousands of students died fighting what we now call the Bar Kochba revolt. So look again at Akiva laughing when he sees that fox among the temple's ruins. That laughter is not the laughter of a dreamy optimist trying to escape reality. It's not the laughter of an abject faith that only God knows and can control the future. That's just despair in disguise. Like irony and the panoply of amusements that we use to distract ourselves from what we see around us. No, Akiva's laughter is the laughter of hope. Hope merited by commitment. That's how we can make sense of the fact that Akiva, on the one hand, laughed in the face of destruction, but also completely committed his life to changing the world in the way that he thought was possible, by supporting Bar Kochba, even though most of his colleagues thought it was a foolish move. So Akiva was both deeply committed to the transformation of the world, but also deeply patient and hopeful that whatever suffering he encountered would pass. Whatever suffering the Jewish people encountered, whatever hurt there was in the world, was only temporary. That laughter is the laughter of true simcha, a Jewish laughter that we have to fight hard to merit in our own time. This past year tested our faith. We want at times to surrender to despair, to accept that the weight of history or the imperatives of divine will are too grand to take note of human wishes. And in the face of this, it is imperative that we stand back and that we see that we are part of a much larger story whose chapters run longer than our lives. It is natural that we resist this truth, because to accept it is to accept the limits on our lives. Though we wish to live with the illusion that we are in control, this past year has exposed that as a fantasy, hasn't it? If we have the courage and humility to accept that our lives are notes and a song that stretches over millennia, we can make sense of our lives. Like Akiva, we can see that after we mourn our losses, we can celebrate the future that we help to compose. Our job is to create beauty and light in the small part of that magnificent song, that long story that stretches over millennia. We don't get to write the song, but we get to be the ones who compose its notes. To merit such joy and such laughter requires mesirat nefesh, a term from our past that literally means giving over of the soul. Though it is used to describe martyrdom, like Rabbi Akiva's, we can discover our own mesirat nefesh by living with a commitment to creation of a world of holiness. Such a world, dreamed by the Torah and demanded by the prophets, requires that each of us face the darkness with gestures of light. If we distance ourselves from surrender, and in this moment of trial stand for audacious acts that sanctify the world, small acts of beauty, grand acts of courage, in whatever way that we can as individuals, then this decency, this courage, this kindness, this beauty that we bring into the world will give us every reason to be joyful, and will prove that we have every reason to have hope and even to laugh in the year 5781. May each of us commit to the deeds that will merit laughter and joy in the coming year. Shana Tova.